It was a warm evening in July when I drove up to my parents' house for summer break. After 3 years of college, these visits had fallen into a predictable pattern: Mom's overenthusiastic hugs, Dad's awkward pats on the back, and endless questions about my studies that never quite masked their disinterest. "Maya, honey," Mom called from the porch. "You're just in time for dinner. And guess who's coming over?" I didn't need to guess. Jennifer, my older sister, and her husband Tom had made it their habit to drop by whenever I was home. As if they needed to remind everyone of their success story. Sure enough, 2 hours later, we were all seated around the dining table. Mom had pulled out her special occasion tablecloth, the one with the delicate lace trim that only saw daylight when Jennifer visited. "So," Jennifer announced, setting down her fork with that theatrical flair she'd perfected over the years. "Tom and I have been thinking. We should all go to Hawaii for Christmas." Mom literally clapped her hands like an excited schoolgirl. "Oh, that would be wonderful." Dad beamed with pride. "What a fantastic idea, sweetheart." Then Jennifer turned to me, that familiar mocking smile playing on her lips. "Maya, do you think you can afford it? Or should Big Sister help you out?" I felt my cheeks burn, but kept my voice steady. "I can manage my own expenses, thanks." "Are you sure?" Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "Because we're looking at about $3,000 per person for flights and hotel." I almost choked on my water. $3,000. That was more than all my savings combined, and I was only making minimum wage at my part-time jobs. But I'd rather eat ramen for the next 6 months than accept Jennifer's charity. "I said I'll manage," I repeated firmly. Jennifer shrugged and turned back to our parents. "Well, anyway, the restaurant is doing amazing. We just hired a new sous chef from Italy, can you believe it? Authentic Italian cuisine right here in our town." "You're so entrepreneurial, dear," Mom gushed. "Maya, you should really take notes from your sister about business sense." "Yes, Maya," Jennifer chimed in. "Maybe you could even work for me someday." Sitting at that dinner table, watching my parents fawn over Jennifer's Hawaii plans, I felt like I was 10 again. Nothing had changed. The same eager nods from Mom, the same proud smile on Dad's face, the same feeling of being invisible. Jennifer was still their golden child, just as she'd been since we were kids. 5 years between us might as well have been 50 for all the difference it made in how our parents saw us. They never said it outright, but their actions spoke volumes. Jennifer was the one they believed in, the one they were sure would make something of herself. "Hey, remember when Jennifer won the school business competition in 10th grade? Dad would often reminisce. We knew right then she had that entrepreneurial spirit. The funny thing is, they weren't cruel about it. They never deliberately hurt me or put me down. They just forgot I was there sometimes. Like I was a background character in the Jennifer show. They'd remember to ask about my grades or if I needed anything, but their eyes would always drift back to Jennifer, waiting for her next achievement to celebrate. Thank God for Grandpa Joe. He lived in that big old house, the one with the wraparound porch and the creaky swing. He was the only one who seemed to have enough love for both of us. A successful businessman himself, he'd promised early on to pay for both our college educations. When Jennifer left for college, I was 13 at the time, I thought things would change. Finally, I'd get my chance to be the daughter in the spotlight. Boy, was I wrong. Jennifer just called. Mom would burst into my room, practically vibrating with excitement. She's joined the debate team. We should drive up this weekend to see Jennifer, Dad would suggest at breakfast. We can take her some money for expenses. They'd spend hours on Skype with her, the laptop perched on the kitchen counter while they cooked dinner, Jennifer's voice filling our house even in her absence. Meanwhile, I'd slip out the back door and head to Grandpa's house. Those afternoons at Grandpa's became my sanctuary. We had our own little routine that felt more like home than my actual home ever did. We'd settle into his worn leather couch, a tub of mint chocolate chip ice cream between us, and watch old movies on his ancient TV. You know what's great about Casablanca, Maya, he'd say, pausing the movie. It's not about the obvious hero. It's about the quiet one who does the right thing when nobody's watching. Other days, we'd order a pepperoni pizza and he'd tell me stories about his own childhood while we played chess. He taught me how to fish, too, taking me out on weekends to the lake behind his house. The thing about fishing, he'd say as he helped me bait my hook, is that the best fish aren't always the ones making the biggest splash. Sometimes it's the quiet ones, swimming deep, that turn out to be the most special. I'd sit there in his little fishing boat, watching the sunlight sparkle on the water, and feel like maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to be the favorite to be loved. Grandpa had a way of making me feel seen without making a big production out of it. Want to watch Roman Holiday again? He'd ask after a long day of fishing. I bought those chocolate cookies you like. Those moments weren't grand or flashy like Jennifer's achievements. They were quiet, simple, and real. While my parents were driving across state lines to deliver spending money to Jennifer, I was learning how to play poker with Grandpa using M&Ms as chips. 5 years passed in a blur of family dinners and achievements, all Jennifer's, of course. She graduated college with honors, landed a job at a prestigious firm, and started dating Tom, who my parents immediately declared was perfect for her. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my own college journey. The day I left for college, Grandpa hugged me tighter than he ever had before. His embrace felt different somehow, more urgent, more final. "I love you so much, Maya," he whispered in my ear. "Never forget that." I laughed it off at the time. "Grandpa, you're acting like we'll never see each other again." "I'll be home for Thanksgiving." He just smiled that gentle smile of his and patted my cheek. "Just remember what I said, kiddo." 2 months into my freshman year, Mom called. Her voice was breaking as she told me Grandpa had died in his sleep. The world stopped spinning for a moment. I sat there on my dorm room bed, phone pressed to my ear, unable to process the words. The funeral was on a crisp autumn day. After the service, we all gathered in Grandpa's attorney's office for the reading of the will. Jennifer sat primly in her designer black dress, while I fidgeted in the scratchy department store one I'd bought last minute. To my daughter Sarah, the attorney read, "I leave the sum of $50,000. Mom nodded, squeezing Dad's hand. To my granddaughter Jennifer, "I leave the sum of $300,000. Jennifer's face lit up. She immediately turned to Tom, who'd been hovering by her side throughout the funeral. "Baby, we can have that dream wedding now. And still have enough to start our restaurant." And to my granddaughter Maya, the attorney continued, "I leave my house on Maple Street, including all its contents and the surrounding property." The room went quiet for a moment before Jennifer burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Maya got the old house? That's hilarious." She wiped tears of mirth from her eyes. "Don't worry, sis, maybe you can sell it and buy yourself something nice. Though I doubt anyone would want that creaky old place." Jennifer, Mom scolded half-heartedly, but she was already smiling at her elder daughter's plans. "We'll have the wedding in spring," Jennifer announced, completely taking over the somber moment. "Tom and I already have the perfect business plan for an authentic Italian restaurant. This is exactly the capital we needed." True to her word, Jennifer threw herself into wedding planning. It was a spectacular affair: white doves, ice sculptures, a 5-tier cake, and what felt like half the town in attendance. I stood next to her in a bridesmaid dress she'd chosen, watching her marry Tom in what Mom called the social event of the season. Before the honeymoon tan had even faded, Jennifer and Tom opened their restaurant. They called it Bella Vita, Beautiful Life. The local paper did a feature on them, praising the young entrepreneurs for bringing authentic Italian cuisine to our small town. Mom and Dad framed the article and hung it in their living room. Meanwhile, I tried to figure out what to do with my inheritance. The property taxes weren't insignificant, and maintaining that big old house wouldn't be cheap. After running the numbers one weekend, I thought I'd found a solution. At the next family dinner, I decided to bring it up. "I'd been thinking about the house," I said, trying to sound confident as I pushed my green beans around the plate. "Since I'm at college most of the year, I could rent it out. That would help cover the taxes and maintenance." The silence that followed made me look up. Mom and Jennifer were exchanging one of their looks, the kind that had always meant trouble for me growing up. Jennifer's husband Tom suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "Oh, honey," Mom said in that patronizing tone she reserved for when she thought I was being particularly dense. "Why would you want to rent to strangers when your sister and Tom need a place to live?" I blinked. "What?" Jennifer set down her wine glass with a delicate clink. "Well, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Tom and I could use the extra space, especially now that we're running the restaurant. And obviously, you're not going to charge rent from your own sister. I mean, that would be ridiculous." "Right, Mom?" "Of course it would," Mom agreed immediately. "Family helps family." And just like that, they turned back to their previous conversation about the restaurant's new wine list. Dad nodded along, Jennifer gestured animatedly about some expensive Chianti she'd imported, and Tom finally looked up from his potatoes to join in. I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. I could protest, of course. I could point out that it was my house, my inheritance, my decision. I could remind them that Jennifer and Tom had just gotten a huge sum of money from Grandpa's will, while I got, well, apparently nothing now. But I knew it wouldn't make any difference. They'd look at me with that mixture of disappointment and annoyance they always did when I didn't go along with their plans. Mom would sigh and remind me about family loyalty. Jennifer would make subtle jabs about my selfishness for weeks. Dad would give me that look, the one that said I was making things difficult for no good reason. So I did what I'd always done. I swallowed my protests along with my now cold green beans and stayed quiet. The next weekend, Jennifer and Tom moved into my house. She sent me pictures of how they were updating the place, Grandpa's old leather chair replaced by some modern monstrosity, his beloved fishing photos taken down to make room for framed reviews of their restaurant. While I studied for midterms in my cramped dorm room, my sister and her husband lived rent-free in my house. Every time I came home for breaks, I had to ask permission to visit what was legally my own property. Let's get back to the present. After that summer dinner, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. Between morning shifts at the campus cafe and evening hours at the study library, I barely had time to breathe. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd think about Hawaii and push myself to pick up an extra shift. When Jennifer called in late November, I had the money ready. $3,000, nearly every penny I'd earned over the past few months. "Send it today," she instructed. "I need to finalize the bookings." I transferred the money immediately, my hands shaking with excitement as I clicked send on the banking app. That weekend, I treated myself to a new swimsuit, nothing fancy, just a simple blue one-piece on sale. My friend Lisa let me borrow her good suitcase, the one with the wheels that actually worked. December 23rd arrived crisp and cold. I showed up at my parents' house with my borrowed suitcase and new swimsuit, practically buzzing with excitement. But something felt off. Mom barely met my eyes when she hugged me, and Dad kept clearing his throat the way he did when he was uncomfortable. Then Jennifer and Tom arrived. The moment they walked in, I knew something was wrong. Jennifer had that look on her face, the same one she'd worn when she told me she'd be living in my house rent-free. Mom and Jennifer exchanged glances that made my stomach twist. We sat down to dinner, and for a few minutes, there was only the sound of forks against plates. Then Jennifer set down her wine glass and cleared her throat. "We need to discuss something," she announced. "The restaurant, well, we've hit a rough patch. The numbers aren't what we projected." Mom reached over and squeezed her hand supportively. I noticed she already knew what was coming. "We've had to make some tough decisions," Jennifer continued, her voice dripping with fake regret. "We've had to cut some expenses, including our contribution to the Hawaii trip budget." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "So," she went on, gesturing between herself, Tom, and our parents, "we've all discussed it, and we think the best solution is for Maya to sit this one out." The room started spinning. "But I already paid my share," I managed to say. Yes, well, Jennifer smiled that condescending smile I knew so well. That money will help cover the rest of our expenses. We couldn't possibly cancel on everyone, and Tom and I never even had a proper honeymoon because we went straight into the restaurant business. I looked at Mom and Dad, waiting for them to say something, to object to this insanity. But they just sat there, Mom still patting Jennifer's hand, Dad studying his plate as if it held the secrets of the universe. I paid my share, I said again, my voice shaking. $3,000. That was all my savings. Maya, Mom snapped, her tone sharp enough to make me flinch. Family helps family. Jennifer and Tom are going through a difficult time with the restaurant. The least you can do is be understanding. Understanding? I whispered. Yes, understanding. Besides, someone needs to watch the house while we're gone. Mom turned back to Jennifer. Now, about the hotel arrangements. I stood up so abruptly, my chair scraped against the floor. Nobody even looked up. I climbed the stairs to my old bedroom, the sounds of their cheerful conversation floating up behind me. They continued chatting and laughing as if they hadn't just stolen my money and crushed my dreams. Lying in my childhood bed that night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars Grandpa had helped me stick on the ceiling years ago, I made my decision. The next morning, I played my part perfectly. I stood on the front porch, smiling and waving as they loaded their luggage into 2 waiting taxis. Don't forget to water Mom's plants, Jennifer called out, adjusting her designer sunglasses. And check the mail every day, Mom added. Don't worry about a thing, I assured them, still smiling. Jennifer leaned out the taxi window. I'll send you lots of photos. You know, so you won't feel left out. She laughed as if she'd just made the funniest joke. I kept waving until both taxis disappeared around the corner. Then I walked straight to my car and drove to Grandpa's house, my house. Tom and Jennifer's belongings were everywhere. Her clothes filled the closets Grandpa's suits once occupied. Their pretentious art hung where his fishing photos used to be. Their wedding photos sat on the mantel where Grandpa kept our chess set. I started in the master bedroom, pulling out suitcases and boxes, methodically packing everything. Designer clothes, expensive shoes, Tom's custom-made suits, all of it went into boxes and bags. I found their important documents in Grandpa's old study and packed those too. The moving company charged me triple their usual rate for Christmas Eve service. My next stop was a 24-hour locksmith. He also charged a holiday premium, but I didn't care. I watched with satisfaction as he changed every lock in my house. I drove back to campus, arriving just as my friends were starting their orphan Christmas celebration, our nickname for the holiday party we threw for students who couldn't or didn't want to go home. Maya, Lisa exclaimed when I walked in. I thought you'd be in Hawaii by now. Change of plans, I said, accepting the cup of hot chocolate she offered. But you know what? I think I'm exactly where I need to be. For a week, my phone buzzed constantly with Jennifer's updates from Hawaii. Each notification felt like a deliberate jab to the ribs. Living our best life, read the caption under a photo of Jennifer and Tom sipping cocktails on the beach. Making memories with the people who matter most accompanied a sunset dinner picture. My Instagram feed became a showcase of their perfect Hawaiian vacation. Jennifer lounging by infinity pools, Mom and Dad smiling at luau's, Tom trying to surf. Every photo was carefully filtered and captioned with nauseating platitudes about family time and much-needed breaks from running a business. The worst was her post about knowing when to step back from work and enjoy life. That one came with a photo of all of them holding champagne glasses at a New Year's Eve party, paid for with my savings. Then, early on New Year's Day, my phone exploded. Maya, why are all of Jennifer's things in our living room? Mom. Call me immediately. Dad. What the hell did you do with our stuff? Jennifer. The locks aren't working. Did you change them? Tom. I watched the messages roll in, my phone buzzing like an angry hornet. This is completely unacceptable. Call us now. Mom. If you don't bring the new keys right now, you'll regret this. Jennifer. Maya Elizabeth Parker, answer your phone this instant. Dad. The messages kept coming, growing increasingly angry. Words like ungrateful, selfish, and spiteful filled my screen. Jennifer's texts became particularly colorful, peppered with accusations about betraying family and ruining their lives. How dare you throw your own sister out on the street? After everything we've done for you? Mom. You're just jealous because we got to go to Hawaii and you didn't. Jennifer. This is the most selfish thing you've ever done, Dad. My phone showed 47 missed calls and over 100 messages by mid-morning. I read each one, letting their words wash over me without response. With each angry message, I felt lighter, freer. They could rage and threaten all they wanted, I wasn't that compliant little girl anymore. I put my phone on silent and went to get breakfast with my friends, leaving their messages unread and their calls unanswered. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel compelled to explain or justify myself to them. By evening, my phone showed over 200 missed calls. The constant buzzing had become white noise, but when Mom's name flashed across my screen for the 201st time, I finally answered. How dare you? Mom's voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. Do you have any idea what you've put your sister through? Maya, Dad's voice joined in from another extension. This behavior is completely unacceptable. I sat cross-legged on my dorm room bed, surprisingly calm. Is it? Like taking my $3,000 and going to Hawaii without me was acceptable? That was different, Mom spluttered. The restaurant. No, I cut her off, my voice steady. Let me talk. For once in my life, just let me talk. Amazingly, they fell silent. You took my money I worked double shifts to earn. You let Jennifer and Tom live in my house rent-free while they ran their restaurant. You've always treated me like I was nothing compared to Jennifer. Always. That's not, Dad started. Remember my high school graduation? You left early because Jennifer called about a job interview. My college acceptance letter? You barely looked at it because Jennifer had just started dating Tom. Every achievement, every milestone in my life has been overshadowed by Jennifer's latest whatever. The words poured out of me, years of hurt and resentment finally finding their voice. And then Hawaii. You didn't just take my money, you laughed about it. Jennifer sent me mocking photos. Do you have any idea how that felt? To know my own family could be so cruel? The silence on the other end stretched out. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice softer, but still defensive. Maya, you have to understand. Jennifer and Tom are really struggling with the restaurant. They need help. And I needed parents who cared about me as much as they cared about Jennifer. I needed a sister who didn't treat me like a doormat. I needed a family who saw me as more than just Jennifer's backup plan. But where will they live? Mom's voice cracked. They can live with you, just like they are now. Or they can rent an apartment like normal adults. My house isn't their safety net anymore. And starting next month, I'm renting it out to actual paying tenants. You can't, Mom began. I can, and I will. I've already talked to a property management company. The lease is being drawn up. I hung up before they could respond. 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with messages from Jennifer. You vindictive witch, read the first one. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy now that you've destroyed our lives. Each message was nastier than the last, a stream of vitriol that would have devastated me a year ago. Now, I just turned off my phone and went to sleep. That was a year ago. I'm in my senior year now, and I haven't spoken to any of them since. Through the family grapevine, I hear things. The restaurant finally went under completely. Jennifer and Tom are still living with our parents, supposedly regrouping before their next venture. Meanwhile, the property management company I hired found excellent tenants for Grandpa's house. The rent they pay covers taxes, with enough left over to build a decent savings account. I'm careful with the money, I think Grandpa would be proud of that. Sometimes, usually late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder if we'll ever reconcile. If Mom will ever understand why I did what I did. If Jennifer will ever see me as an equal rather than a convenience. If Dad will ever stand up for me the way he always stood up for her. But then I remember that day in Hawaii when they were all drinking champagne with my money, and I realized something: I don't need their understanding anymore. I don't need their approval or their love or their acceptance. What I need, what I finally have, is my self-respect.
After the funeral of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law rushed over to me with a broad smile. "Ashley, everything's been taken care of, right?" "Yes, all that's left is to hand over the empty lunch boxes to the contractor." "Good. I can handle that." "So, Ashley." My mother-in-law glanced at Jack and they nodded to each other. Barely containing her laughter, she grinned at me and blurted out, "You're no longer needed. Get out. The maid can get divorced and leave." I let out a small sigh and bowed my head in feigned disappointment. Then nodded as if giving up. "I understand." I thought, all according to plan. They burst into excitement, and Jack hurriedly pulled out the divorce papers. "Come on. Write it now. I can't stand it if you pretend not to know later." I was barely holding back my eagerness to write. This moment was something I had been waiting for. "My name is Ashley Baker. I married into this family at 25, and it's been 10 years now. Before I knew it, I had reached an age where pregnancy is considered high risk. I met Jack at work. He was 35, 10 years older than me. We started dating and, surprisingly, it was comfortable, so we decided to get married. But I never imagined that this marriage was just to secure a caretaker. The shock came right after we got married. Initially, we planned to look for an apartment together. But Jack, without any remorse, said to me, "It's a waste to pay rent. Let's live with my parents." "That's settled then." "That wasn't the plan." I protested in a panic. "But, we're newlyweds, I think living together from the start is a bit." No, being newlyweds doesn't matter. You need to live with us for my parents' sake." "Your parents?" "Why?" "Because my dad needs care. The more hands, the better." This was news to me. "Huh?" But he looked fine when I greeted him before. He just had a bad leg then. You wouldn't know it from a quick look. Jack laughed it off. Apparently, his father had an accident that worsened his condition, making it difficult to walk. His father was already 75 at the time of our marriage. Certainly, it wasn't surprising for someone of his age to have physical issues. Jack's parents had him later in life and were much older. His father was already 40 when Jack was born. I had never thought about the age of a spouse's parents before. But who would have thought that at 25, marrying a 35-year-old would suddenly lead to caring for a 75-year-old? Maybe I should have been concerned about their ages. Jack added insult to injury as he saw my confusion. "That's the situation, so I'll take care of food and shelter. In return, Ashley, quit your job soon." "What?" "But." I said I didn't plan to quit my job even after getting married, right? We had discussed this before marriage. Unless I got pregnant, I wanted to continue working as usual. Jack had agreed to this. "Huh? Did you say that?" "Well, it's realistically impossible to work while caring. You might not get enough sleep at night. It's better for you to quit, for your own good." His tone made it clear he intended to dump everything on me. This wasn't what I had agreed to. If that was the case, I'd rather call off the marriage. I'd even be okay with getting a divorce. My true feelings bubbled up inside, but for some reason, I couldn't voice them. I've always been a people pleaser and bad at expressing my own opinions. Even now, although I absolutely hated the idea of being a caretaker, I didn't want to be seen as cold-hearted for refusing, so I hesitated in my response. Amidst this, my mother-in-law was all smiles. Lucky us to have a young bride. I'm too old to take care of Dad, and Jack is busy with work. Ashley, you'll manage the household and care, and support our family. I'm counting on you. Haha. Unable to say I'd handle it, I just gave a vague smile. When I first met her during our marriage greeting, she seemed straightforward and kind. However, as I talked more with her, I realized my mother-in-law's true nature. She was the type who thought of those around her as her servants. In the end, without the resolve to divorce and escape, my married life began in my in-laws' house. Jack said, if you can balance care, housework, and a job, then you don't need to quit. But that was impossible, and I resigned from my job early on. Living at my in-laws, my life felt more like that of a maid than a newlywed bride. I woke up earlier and went to bed later than anyone. If my father-in-law needed the bathroom in the middle of the night, I was there regardless of the time. Moreover, my mother-in-law was particular about taste and nutrition in meals, and would nag if I cut corners. Ashley, have you ever studied cooking? Or are you making it this strong because you find us annoying? I'm sorry. I'll be more careful next time. I thought I was cooking normally, following recipes to the letter. But if it wasn't to my mother-in-law's liking, it wasn't good enough. This is harder than any job. Jack, far from being supportive, was indifferent, busy with games and his smartphone. I didn't understand why I had gotten married. If we had had a child, maybe the situation would have been different. But no, they would have just dumped childcare and care on me as well. Yet, as if to add insult to injury, there were no signs of pregnancy. The only solace was that, although caregiving was hard, my father-in-law was a kind person. He repeatedly thanked me as I awkwardly provided care. I'm sorry to have you take care of an old man like me every day. Don't say you're an old man. I'd like to rely on a helper, but my mother-in-law dislikes having strangers at home. She won't listen even if I say so. I could somewhat imagine my mother-in-law's disapproving face, which made me laugh a bit. Then I guess I better do my best. Thank you. But please don't overdo it. As I spent more time with my father-in-law, I found our conversations increasingly enjoyable. He seemed to trust me, confiding his worries in secret. His concerns were somewhat indescribable. Our family was relatively wealthy, and the assets and savings had been accumulated during his time as a company employee. Before I became like this, I was able to manage everything myself. Lately, it seems my mother-in-law, Diane, and Jack have been quietly withdrawing and using the money. They both use the card to withdraw, so they haven't noticed the balance decreasing. But it seems they've already spent quite a bit. What? To withdraw without permission. Isn't that terrible? No, if that makes those kids happy, it's fine. But, you see, the person I'm most indebted to now is you, Ashley. I really want to leave something for you too. Is there a good way? Just knowing he felt this way made me happy. It's okay. Talking with you like this is a break for me. As time passed, I continued to hope that I could care for him peacefully until his end. But the cruel passage of time spared no one. My father-in-law, once so calm and clear-headed, developed dementia. At first, it was just minor forgetfulness, but gradually, He became more confused and irritable. Did you steal it? Hand it over now, or I'll call the police. Here's the passbook. Please, be at ease. His delusions and misconceptions intensified, making him seem like a completely different person. It's the disease, unavoidable. I told myself this, though memories of the peaceful times with him made it very hard. He even began to scream in the middle of the night. Don't make him scream so loudly. The neighbors will look at us with disdain. Stay up and watch him. Diane blamed me hysterically. That's impossible. I already wake up frequently to take care of him. I can't do more, especially not prevent it in advance. There are ways to stop him. Figure something out. That's not something. Watching and being cautious won't solve this. Gagging him was out of the question. To prevent Diane from harming him, I stayed up every night to check on him. Father, calm down. It's okay. There was no thief. I've checked. Shut up. I can't trust what you say. Don't touch me. I'll call the police. My father-in-law repeatedly threatened to call the police. All I could do was try to calm him down. After 5 years of his dementia worsening, home care continued because Diane refused to consider a facility or hospital. I was completely exhausted. Of course, the problem wasn't just with my father-in-law. Diane remained as self-centered as ever, and Jack was no different. Sadly, humans adapt, and I gradually became accustomed to it. It wasn't that their words didn't bother me, but I learned to let things slide or simply agree. Giving up without hope made things slightly easier. That applied to Diane's hysterics, snide remarks, and nagging too. After enduring it for so many years, I no longer panicked or tensed up over small things. Ashley. The cleaning in the bathroom and the toilet was sloppy. Especially the toilet, since guests might use it. You need to do better. Diane sighed as she criticized me. I used to panic and apologize for such comments, but now I just handled them calmly. Understood, I'll take care of it when I'm free. When you're free. What are you talking about? Do it now. Understood. Jack looked at me with utter disdain. You always look so displeased, it's annoying. You're gloomy, and somehow you make the whole house feel dark. Yet he doesn't propose divorce because he knows they'd be in trouble without me. Neither Diane nor Jack could handle the general housework and caregiving. I don't want to cause unnecessary trouble because I promised myself and my father-in-law that I would see him through to the end. Once he's gone, I'll leave this house immediately. It's unlikely that Diane and Jack will try to stop me. Once my father-in-law passes, they'll likely dispose of me too. They prefer someone who flusters and caters to them, not someone who reacts minimally like I do now. Being imperturbable in the face of their sarcasm is the least amusing thing for them. I don't regret deciding to marry, but sometimes when I think of my parents, my heart tightens. They would never imagine that their daughter, who married to find happiness, would be treated this way. After marrying, I hardly returned home because I couldn't leave my father-in-law behind. My family home and my in-laws' home are separated by a train ride, making day trips difficult. Even if I could make a day trip, Diane and Jack alone couldn't handle my father-in-law for nearly a full day. Once everything is over, I'll tell my parents. Until then, I don't want to worry them. Young lady, you seem very tired. Are you okay? Ah, yes, I'm fine. My father-in-law often forgot about me now. However, when not possessed by his delusions, he was as gentle as he used to be. Is that so? Don't overdo it. You are a precious daughter to your parents. Yes. If I told my parents about my situation, they would definitely tell me to come home. But no matter how hard it is, I can't abandon my father-in-law. I'll watch over you until the end. Thank you. He thanked me, bewildered, which was very much like him, yet it was somehow sad. And then the day came. My father-in-law passed away just a few days after turning 90. When I went to check on him in the morning, he had passed away as if he were sleeping. Seeing his peaceful face, I felt a mix of sadness, relief, loneliness, and accomplishment. The relief that it was finally over was the strongest. I no longer needed to be here. I informed Diane and Jack about my father-in-law's passing and started to take action. The wake and the funeral went smoothly. After all the relatives had gone home and everything was cleaned up, Diane rushed over to me with a full smile. Ashley, everything's been taken care of, right? Yes, all that's left is to hand over the empty lunchboxes to the contractor. Good. I can handle that. So, Ashley. Diane exchanged glances with Jack, they both nodded at each other. Unable to contain her laughter, she grinned at me and blurted out. You're no longer needed. Get out. As she finished speaking, Diane Baker, ever so kindly, threw my everyday tote bag at me. Indeed, everything I needed was inside it. Are you saying I should leave right now? I asked while looking at the bag, and it was Jack who replied, not Diane. The maid can get divorced and leave. Diane smiled even wider at his words. They both looked like schoolchildren who had found a new toy, completely oblivious to the fact that this toy had emotions and was quietly setting a trap. I let out a small sigh and deliberately looked disappointed as I nodded resignedly. I understand. I thought, all according to plan. The childlike two burst into excitement, and Jack quickly pulled out the divorce papers. Here. Write it now. I can't stand it if you pretend you didn't know later. Even if he didn't speak so aggressively, I was barely holding back my eagerness to write. This moment was one I had long awaited. As I finished writing, Jack tried to snatch the paper, but I deftly dodged him. What are you doing? You're not going to say you won't divorce at this point, are you? Of course not. But since we're divorcing, I want to make sure everything is in order with my own eyes. A divorce not filed, after all, would be hell. I suggested we go to the city office together to ensure there would be no issues. Considering this family, I expected some resistance, but surprisingly, they agreed easily. There's no point in arguing about this. Let's just submit it quickly. Indeed. If we don't hurry, the lawyer will arrive. They apparently wanted to discuss the will and inheritance. This family had always left the management of its assets to a dedicated lawyer. They wanted to get rid of me quickly so I wouldn't be involved in this discussion. The sight of the three of us in morning clothes at the office window confused the staff. But the divorce was processed smoothly. Now you and I are strangers. Wow, 15 years sure felt long. Now I'm single again. Dad's inheritance is coming in. The future looks bright. We better hurry back to welcome Mr. Thompson. Ashley, this is goodbye for you here. Call a taxi or something. Make your own way back. They were adamant about keeping me out of the inheritance discussions. Not that I had any intention of joining. Then, I nodded, and when I looked up, Jack and his daughter were already getting into their car. I had no regrets about parting ways with such a disrespectful family. Father, take care. I said silently in the direction of my former in-law's house. and then called my parents to report my divorce. After getting off the train and taking a breath, I walked through the gate to see my mother waving at me with a bright smile. "Congratulations on your divorce, Ashley." Her words and expression were so mismatched that I couldn't help but laugh. "Thank you." My father was waiting in the car and, seeing me, he too cheerfully said, "Congratulations on your divorce. You did well, Ashley. You're our pride and joy. Really, it's good you came back. It's great you weren't tied down." Afterwards, my parents continued to praise me. I couldn't share everything about my married life with them. But perhaps they sensed something. At 42, returning home divorced, they encouraged me as much as they could. I felt relieved by my parents' warmth and care, falling asleep in the few minutes it took to get home from the station. At home, they treated me like a guest. I had the first bath. The dinner table was laden with my favorite dishes, almost embarrassingly so. "Thank you, Mom and Dad. Pampering you only for today." "That's right. Tomorrow you start job hunting. There's no food for an unemployed person here." The warm meal was delicious, and eating together with laughter felt wonderful. It had been a long time since I had a morning without being woken up in the night. I stretched and checked my smartphone by the pillow. An intrusive name appeared on it. I hadn't noticed due to the silent mode. But there were numerous calls from Diane since early in the morning. The earliest was just past 5 a.m. It's fine if she wants to wake up early. But that's not a reasonable hour to call someone else. Diane always lacks common sense, probably thinking the world revolves around her. I can guess why she called, but I have no obligation to call back so early in the morning. Leaving the smartphone on the bed, I went downstairs. My mother was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I wondered if I should tell her about Diane's calls when the home phone rang. Could it be? It was just past 7 a.m. Even for Diane, calling an ex-daughter-in-law's parents at this hour would be unusual. But I had underestimated her. The conversation couldn't be heard. But it was clear from my father's twisted face that it was an unpleasant call. After about 5 minutes, he hung up. "Dad, could it be?" He nodded slowly. Diane had started the call with, "I need to talk to your daughter. Bring her out now." When my father said, "She's divorced and back home with us. We are strangers now. Don't call her your daughter-in-law," Diane wouldn't listen. She was furious. No matter how politely we spoke, it was useless. She was so persistent that I just hung up and unplugged the phone line. My father laughed as he said it, dependable as always. But Diane's lack of common sense was relentless. After breakfast, my phone showed dozens more missed calls. She's desperately trying. She must have realized something. At this rate, she might storm our house. As I was considering what to do, my phone rang again in my hand. Better to set a place for a meeting myself than to let my parents be troubled by her. Taking a deep breath, I prepared a call recording app and answered the phone. Finally, you answered. Really? After all those calls, normally you'd call back. Don't you think it's rude? Even calling your home doesn't work. What's wrong with your family? You all need to learn some manners. Her shrill voice was grating, not just on the ears but deep into my head, blaming us as if we were the ignorant ones. From my perspective, calling someone at 5 a.m. is what's truly lacking in common sense. What? You? How dare? It seems she didn't expect a rebuttal. Throughout my marriage, I had always been negated, and over time, I had given up on even voicing my opinions. That I would retort sarcastically was surely unexpected for her. I could imagine Diane Baker speechless on the other end of the phone. Strangers. What are you talking about? You were just my daughter-in-law yesterday. See, you just said it yourself. I was your daughter-in-law until yesterday. Since the divorce papers have been submitted, we are now strangers, right? What? All you do is spout sophistry. What's wrong with you? You're so unpleasant. You started by being rude to me. You may be surprised because you're not used to being spoken back to. But you routinely said even worse things to me. Diane would argue that because I was her daughter-in-law. But being a daughter-in-law doesn't give anyone the right to treat someone however they like. I'm human too. I have feelings. That's because you were inadequate, and as your mother-in-law, I thought it was my duty to retrain you for your own good. So for my own good, you dumped all the caregiving on me alone. And threw all the household chores my way? If it was for training, there are surely better ways. Are you really Ashley? Are you someone else? Up until now, I couldn't assert myself because I was considering my father-in-law. Also, there was the fear that they might not agree to the divorce if I was too assertive. I had been waiting for this moment for a long time. What's the main issue, by the way? I don't think there's any benefit for either of us to keep talking like this. It's about the life insurance. Just as I expected. Back when my father-in-law was still lucid and healthy. My father-in-law initially told me he planned to include me in his will. Even though you're not my biological family, Ashley. I feel sorry that you've been burdened so much. Ideally, I'd have you divorce and escape them, but I doubt they'd allow it. Instead, I want to give back to you somehow after I'm gone. Father. While I was touched by my father-in-law's sentiments, I knew that these people could easily manipulate his will. As an alternative, he made me the beneficiary of his life insurance. Being his daughter-in-law meant I would have to pay taxes. But it was still better than nothing, so he secretly changed it. You forced my husband to change it against his will. You took advantage of his unawareness. I would never do such a thing. Plus, if you check the change history, you can see whether it was done before he showed signs of dementia. If you doubt it, feel free to check. Diane seemed at a loss for words. All I could hear was her heavy breathing. You're just playing dumb. Then let's meet again and clear this up. Otherwise, we might end up following you around indefinitely. Understood. Thus, we agreed to meet again on another day. The weekend arrived, and we met in a private room of a small restaurant located halfway between us. Diane was grumbling, why do we have to go out of our way to meet? But Jack, eager to settle things quickly, persuaded her. The discussion involved Jack, his mother, me, and our family lawyer. I had my parents attend just in case, though they wouldn't speak unless necessary. It seemed they hadn't yet discussed the inheritance, because they had just realized the life insurance issue. Let's settle this while we're at it. Diane said this triumphantly. Her plan was obviously to show us up, having gone through the trouble of bringing the lawyer to us. However, the situation unfolded contrary to her expectations. What? What did you just say? The lawyer repeated his statement calmly as Diane's face twisted in confusion. Since Ashley has completed the adoption procedures, she is included as a beneficiary in the inheritance. Therefore, Richard's assets will be divided among the three of us present. The room fell silent. Diane was the first to break it. That's a lie. She's a stranger. she divorced and became a stranger, right? And yet, she receives an inheritance. That's ridiculous. Jack also vigorously nodded in agreement, following her lead. She's not a blood relative, and she's already divorced and legally a stranger. Why should Ashley receive the same amount as me? While she is not a blood relative, the adoption procedures that were completed mean her relationship with Richard continues. This was unexpected. Indeed, I had gone through the adoption procedures for tax reasons at the time of the marriage, but had almost forgotten about them due to the subsequent turmoil. Surely, my father-in-law had forgotten too. If he remembered, he wouldn't have consulted me about the inheritance or mentioned the life insurance. Diane and Jack were furious, their faces turning bright red with anger. This thieving cat. After being taken care of by us, she dares to extort money even after his death. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have divorced. My share is reduced now. What are you going to do about this? I can't help that, I didn't ask for this. As they continued to make a scene as if the world was ending, the lawyer smiled and said, "She only has the qualifications. For example, she can renounce her right to the inheritance if she chooses." This made Jack and his mother's faces light up. Of course. If she understands her place, she'll naturally refuse, right? Normally. Yeah. Then everything goes back to normal. The inheritance goes to the right people. While I wasn't comfortable with letting them have their way, it also felt wrong to take the inheritance when I wasn't his biological daughter. Even the life insurance was something I agreed to after being persuaded by my father-in-law during his lifetime. I think. Seeing me hesitate, the lawyer smiled and offered a lifeline. Isn't Ashley also the beneficiary of the life insurance? Yes, I am. Expecting him to suggest that I should also step back, he instead proposed something slightly different. How about this? In exchange for not mentioning the life insurance in the future, Ashley will renounce the inheritance. He continued smoothly. And while we're at it, it might be best to dissolve the adoption to avoid future complications. In essence, I would renounce my share of the inheritance and dissolve the adoption, returning to being truly unrelated. In return, Jack and his mother would not interfere with the life insurance that I would receive. Yes, that's acceptable to me. Diane and Jack hesitated for a moment but eventually agreed. Then, we will proceed with the discussion here. Miss Ashley, please feel free to go home. Take care. The lawyer escorted me out of the restaurant and discreetly handed me his business card. I will contact you later for the procedures. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you as well, you've been a great help. With this, my ties with the Baker family were finally severed. However, there was still more to this story. Despite their expectations, Diane and Jack discovered that there was almost no inheritance left from the father-in-law. They had both secretly been spending it bit by bit, unaware that the other was doing the same. They had naively built their hopes on it, which was now impossible to save. Moreover, they had taken on debts anticipating an inheritance, and had spent a substantial amount, far beyond what could be covered by their shares of the inheritance. Now, Diane was juggling part-time jobs, and Jack had started working part-time at a store. Unaccustomed to working, Diane would throw tantrums at the slightest provocation, receive complaints, and fall into emotional instability. Living with such a mother, Jack had to constantly support her. Already exhausted from his job and side work, he had to deal with her incessant nagging at home and manage the household chores, pushing him to his limits. He was about to call me in tears when the lawyer intervened and stopped him. Yes, this was all recent news I heard from the lawyer. After our meeting, he contacted me and shared everything. Richard had been an old friend of mine from long ago. I had kept it a secret from Mrs. Diane because of our professional relationship. He had been in frequent contact with my father-in-law because of their friendship. Richard was truly grateful to you, Ashley. The last years must have been incredibly tough with his dementia. It's admirable you didn't think to run away. Yes. It was difficult. But I had my memories with him, and above all, I had decided to see him through to the end. The idea to make me a beneficiary of the life insurance was also the lawyer's suggestion. There was a chance that any tangible assets would be consumed by the family. But life insurance was guaranteed as long as the premiums were paid. Richard was lucky to have you. Those words brought me some solace. Now, I am staying with my parents, who are still healthy. But one never knows when circumstances similar to those with my in-laws might occur again. Though there would be differences between my biological parents and in-laws, at least I could take pride in having cared for my father-in-law until the end. While I have the chance, I plan to repay my parents and show my gratitude. My name is Julia Anderson. I've been married for 4 years and have a 2-year-old daughter. My husband works at a general hospital, and I thought we had a good relationship. But was I the only one who thought so? One day, while my husband was off to work, a woman stormed into the house. My daughter was out with her grandparents at an amusement park, and I was home alone. I had never seen this woman before. But she greeted me with a bright smile, and since she seemed nice, I thought it might be okay to let her into the house. As I made coffee and we started chatting casually, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Please break up with him. Stunned by her sudden demand, I couldn't grasp what she meant. When I asked her to explain, she burst into tears. I'm dating Ryan. I love him so much. Dating. You mean, it's serious? Yes, I can't live without him. Please, let him be with me. I can't just agree to that suddenly. I had no idea he had a girlfriend. How could I know if that's true? I need to talk to him first. Please don't say that, just break up with him. It's not that simple to just break up. You mean, you won't break up with him? Whether it was her overwhelming emotions or the fact that the conversation wasn't going her way, she attacked me, repeatedly striking my face with a coffee cup. Coffee splashed everywhere, staining the carpet, and I was increasingly covered in blood. I thought she was going to kill me. Just when I thought that, she seemed to snap back to reality, dropped the coffee cup on the floor, and left the house. As she walked out the front door, I rushed into my car and drove to the hospital where my husband worked. Despite the pain all over my body, I managed to get to the hospital and rasped out, "Please, call my husband." The nurse, shocked, replied, "There's no doctor by that name here," and took me to the examination room. I was asked something by the doctor, but all I could think about was that my husband was not there. My husband is Ryan Anderson. He should be in surgery. Even so, the response I got was, "There's no Dr. Anderson here. There never has been." What then? At that point, I passed out. It seemed I had a dream while unconscious. It was as if I was looking back on my life. My parents were wealthy, and I never had to worry about money as a child. After graduating from university, I worked as an employee. It was during that time, at a mixer thrown by a friend, that I met my husband. At the time, my husband was in his first year of residency, and his salary was very low. He would apologetically say he had no money when we went on dates. I was working, and if I ran out of pocket money, I could just ask my parents for more. So, I always paid for our dates. Sorry, I'll be able to cover the dates soon. Don't worry about it. I work, and money is not an issue for me. But years passed, and he remained poor. His parents were poor, and I couldn't even imagine their level of living. After we got married, he sent money to his parents every month. I suggested living together to ease their life, but he refused. No, my mom and dad like their house. Why? That house is quite old? For you maybe, but for my parents, it's a house of memories. They've lived there since their newlywed days. And that's where our family history is etched. In the end, my in-laws never moved from their old house. And most of my husband's salary went to them. I couldn't rely on his salary. Sorry, my parents are poor, so I have to give most of my salary to them. That means we really have little for ourselves. I never realized how strange it was. And I even felt proud of my husband for supporting his parents. When I told my parents about this, they were impressed by what a great person he was. So, I never doubted he was a wonderful person. But the truth was, life was hard, and for the first time, I experienced having no money. When I consulted with my parents, they decided to help out of love for their daughter. But telling my husband would hurt his pride. So out of consideration, I said nothing to him. I worked for him, pleaded to my parents for him, and did everything I could for him. I thought I was happy. Everything was for my husband. Yet, one day, a woman came and I was shattered. Completely, both body and soul. When I regained consciousness, I was apparently crying. The futon was wet, and tears streamed down my cheeks. I thought, was that a dream? It felt so real. It was like a dream telling me that my past self had been betrayed. If not for that, I might never have admitted to being betrayed. It was betrayal, that woman was his mistress, and I had been deceived all along. The worst. For 4 years. Even before we married, so 5 years. I have been deceived all along. He wasn't even working, so sending money to his parents was also a lie. I involved my parents and was just being used by him. And yet, I never realized it. I was a clown. The agony welled up, and I felt a pain in my chest as if being stabbed with needles. I could do nothing about this torment. My husband appeared, nonchalant as if nothing had happened. Why has it come to this? I couldn't sort out my feelings, let alone tell him the truth. If I did, our relationship would be over. Part of me wanted to break up, and part of me didn't. A stranger came by, and while we were talking, she hit me. Why would you let a stranger into our house? What about Emma? Was Emma okay? Emma was taken to the amusement park by her grandparents since the morning. I see, she was okay. Good. How are you doing? Can't you tell? You were hit? Just bruises? It's not just bruises. I wouldn't be hospitalized just for that. Is that so? I was hit on the head with a dish. You're a doctor, you should know how serious that is. Yes, that's right. Ah. I have patients waiting, so I must go. My husband, unable to answer, left the hospital room in a hurry. I thought, I knew it, he's not a doctor. Liar. As I lay in bed staring blankly at the ceiling, my parents walked in with my child. My mother, not expecting that her daughter would be hospitalized while they were at the amusement park, burst into tears as soon as she saw me. Julia. Poor thing. It must have been scary, right? Mom. What happened to make it come to this? What exactly happened? Ryan's woman came. What? What do you mean? Are you saying Ryan was cheating? Hey, why don't you take Emma to the shop or something? Ah, yes, that's a good idea. My father, sensing this was not a conversation for a young child, asked my mother to step out. Once my daughter and wife had left the room, I began to tell my father everything. She came out of nowhere and said she wanted me to break up with him. But I couldn't just do that, and I told her it wasn't that simple. Maybe she got angry because things didn't go her way. She suddenly started hitting me. And with a coffee cup, she hit me on the head. With a coffee cup? Yes. It seems my brain is okay, so I'll be fine. But I will need to stay in the hospital for a while. So, I'm asking you to take care of Emma. That's fine, but what are you going to do from now on? What will I do? Are you going to break up with Ryan? I don't know what to do. Dad, what should I do? If it were up to me, I'd want you to break up. He's put you in danger. And with that kind of woman involved, who knows what she could do to Emma? Ah, you're right. I should think about Emma. There have been too many lies. That's right. Thank you, Dad. I will get a divorce. Good, then leave the rest to me. It wouldn't be fun to just break up without making a point. Thinking deeply, my father said he was going to the shop and left the room. Until my discharge, my husband did not visit. And my parents and I steadily prepared for the divorce. As the day of my discharge approached, I was determined to get a divorce. Furthermore, I became increasingly resentful towards my husband, who hadn't visited even once and hadn't even asked about our daughter. Despite this, I decided to return home for now, but when I got there, my husband was nowhere to be found. Moreover, it was clear from how neat the house was that a woman had been there. I thought, unforgivable. He had a woman in this house. I gathered some personal belongings and returned to my parents' home. At night, I received a call from my husband. He must have known today was my discharge day. And yet, instead of coming to pick me up, he had not replied earlier. Now, he was calling to ask why I wasn't home. Julia, you were discharged today, right? That's right. Why aren't you at home? I'm at my parents' house. Why are you at your parents' house? I wonder why. It's not a matter of I wonder why, come back home. Do you have any idea how worried I am? Worried? If you were worried, you could have visited me in the hospital. How can you say you're worried when you only visited once? I was busy with work, I couldn't help it. Oh, really? Well, I'll be staying here for a while. What? Without saying anything further, I hung up the phone. Then my husband came flying over. Now of all times. When he arrived, he acted as if nothing had happened and started to talk about taking our daughter and going back home. But my parents wouldn't allow it. Julia has just been discharged from the hospital. What are you planning to make her do by immediately taking her back home? What? If you were a doctor, you'd understand what this means. But there's something we need to talk about, so sit down. Honey, please take care of Emma. Yes. My mother took my daughter to another room, while my husband's smile stiffened. It's scary how angry you look. What's going on with both of you? There's nothing funny here. In this situation, it's you who seems to be out of your mind for laughing. What do you mean, this situation? Do you even understand why I was hospitalized? Yeah, some unknown woman came in, right? The issue is who that woman is. Huh? If she's unknown, then she's unknown. She said she was your girlfriend. That's why she asked me to break up with you. Huh? That must be some misunderstanding. Do you think I'd get hurt like this over a misunderstanding? No, that's a mistake. That woman must be crazy. Why would I be with another woman? That's impossible. A crazy woman? Yeah, that's right. She must be a stalker or something. I've felt like I've been watched recently, so I was trying to keep you safe from harm. But I never imagined she'd do something like this. Are you serious about that? Of course. There's no way I could be cheating. Really? So, about being a doctor at the general hospital, is that true? Of course. I'm a surgeon at the general hospital. That's strange. The hospital you work at is the one I was admitted to, right? What? When I rushed in and asked them to call my husband, they said there was no doctor named Anderson. They said there never had been. What? My husband looked perplexed and tilted his head as if something was wrong. If you really are a doctor at that hospital, why didn't you show your face at all while I was admitted? Ah, I hadn't told you, but I was transferred from that general hospital to another one a bit further away. I couldn't visit because I was busy every day. I hardly even came home. That's also strange. The coffee cup that should have been on the floor, and the coffee stains that should have been on the carpet were all cleaned up. I thought it would be tough for you when you came back. So I cleaned that up myself. That's another lie, isn't it? It's not a lie. You lie as easily as you breathe. I'm telling you, it's not a lie. What's wrong? Did getting hit in the head mess you up? I was told at the hospital that there has never been a surgeon named Anderson there. That's just because the nurse you asked didn't know. Not everyone knows who I am. Even though you're both in surgery? Could that really happen? It's a big hospital. Then show me your medical license. What? I don't have that on me. You don't have it? That's right. I have something like a license, but it's too big to carry around. No, you're supposed to carry something like a license with you. What? Here, like this. My father showed his smartphone screen, and my husband froze and thought for a while. Then he said, that thing. I keep it safe at home because it would be terrible if I lost it. My father swiped the screen a few times. Then he showed the screen titled Medical Qualification Verification Search. It seems you're not there. That means you're a fake doctor. That must be just a registration error. What nonsense are you spouting? If it's a registration error, how can you work at a general hospital? Wouldn't the hospital check whether you're a real doctor? No. It really is a registration error. These things happen. Dad, aren't you unfamiliar with IT? After all, it's humans who do the registering. These things happen. How far will you go in denying it? Then tell me about the money you've been sending to your parents. I've been hearing all these great things, but perhaps that's a lie too? That's not true. It's all real. Is that so? I've had you investigated, and it turns out you attended school through correspondence for both high school and college. I was told it was a famous university's medical school, but it was completely different. A correspondence school that no one knows, and you were almost a shut-in. At some point, your mother, fed up with your inability to do anything, tried to make you work a part-time job, but that didn't go well either. Since then, you've given up on working. Though you said you worked, it lasted only about a week. Is that so? I was shocked by these new facts, and as I looked at my husband, his face turned from pale to red, like a traffic light. Your parents continued to work for your sake, and eventually, your father passed away from the stress. Yet, you refused to leave your room. Later, in place of your father, your mother worked desperately. But her income was low, and life became more difficult. Yet she worked hard, came home, cooked, and collapsed into bed every day. Even seeing your mother like that, you never changed, never left the house. At 25, thinking that you couldn't go on like this and would end up alone in the future, you decided you had to marry. You looked for a woman who would support you and attended a mixer. That's where you met Julia. You lied about being a doctor, deceived her, and succeeded in marrying her. How can you say such things? Even if you're my father-in-law, that's defamation. Then my father took out an envelope marked Detective Agency. This envelope contains an investigation report about you. Everything I've just said comes from that investigation. How can you say it's true? The investigation could be wrong. Even the most capable detective can't uncover every detail of a person's past. My father took out his smartphone again and tapped the screen. The voice that came from the phone was my mother-in-law's. That boy has never worked a day in his life. He got married, and it seems he's getting by somehow, so I'm finally relieved. Sending money home? Never happened. Not once since he got married. He's never worked, so it must be Julia's earnings that are keeping them going. There'd be no way to send money home. Stop it. Detectives might not know your past, but surely your own parents would? I've heard a lot, and they told me just what the detectives did. And that there has never been any money sent home. Wow, I was surprised. You've deceived not only Julia and us, but even your own parents. My husband turned pale and trembled. It seemed like a complete knockout, but my father did not ease up on him. Now, shall we get to the main point? The main point? It seems you have a mistress, not a stalker. No, that's not true. She's a stalker. No matter how much you insist, it's useless. It's all written in the investigation report. Surely, she must be in cahoots with the detective. Is that so? Then how will you explain this? My father pulled several photos from the envelope. They showed the woman who hit me walking arm in arm with my husband. Both of them coming out of a hotel. And the two of them looking outside from the woman's apartment. There were too many scenes just like these. How will you explain this evidence? That woman is crazy. She kept coming on to me persistently. So, I promised Julia I wouldn't get close to her. And was just trying to keep the woman appeased. Is that so? The only person I love is Julia. Ignoring my husband's desperate attempts to explain, my father stood up and opened the door to the next room. Out came Michelle, the mistress who had hit me. Ah. Michelle. Why are you here? Why? Why are you here? You said we were going to get married, right? Yet, you call me a stalker? You always said your love for your wife was fading. And that you wanted to get back together? No, You said you were a doctor, that you were a resident with no money, right? That your wife took all your salary, so you had no money. That's why I've been helping you out with what little salary I get. And yet, you weren't even a doctor, nor did you have any intention of leaving your wife. I believed you and confronted your wife. That's going too far. If I hadn't done that, I'd still be deceived by you. Michelle, do you really want to marry this man? Of course. I've been with him for a long time and decided to live for him. No, it's not true. I never intended to leave Julia. How cruel. You don't want to leave your wife? So everything you told me was a lie? No, it wasn't a lie. I was serious about that. But it's also true that I don't want to leave my wife. That's unacceptable. I even gave you pocket money. You said you'd pay me back once your residency was over and your salary increased. You asked me to bear with it for now. That's true, but if being a doctor was a lie, how were you planning to pay me back? Well, I thought Michelle would understand. Understand what? Maybe if I said I got fired as a doctor, it would somehow work out. So you were planning to deceive me again? Continue to be with me as a mistress while staying married to your wife? Don't think of it that way. It's better if we just enjoy our time together without thinking about marriage. I wanted to get married. I wanted to be your wife. Marrying you means divorcing Julia. Doing that would mean I can't access Julia's inheritance. She's a wealthy heiress. Staying married to her is much more profitable than marrying you. Ah, I see. So that's why you married Julia, with all those lies. The worst. To think it was all for my father's inheritance from the start. No, that's not it. It's just sophistry to convince Michelle. Sophistry? So you do prefer your wife over me? Michelle, let me ask you again. Even now, do you still want to marry this man? Of course. No matter how many times you ask, my feelings won't change. Well, that's good to hear. Then here's the divorce paper. Julia, Ryan, sign it. What? No, I don't want a divorce. Whether you sign it now or later, it'll happen. I can hire a lawyer. This is. I picked up the pen and wrote down my name. Now it's your turn. My father placed the divorce paper in front of my husband. And although he resisted, he agreed to the divorce. Now, this is next. The marriage certificate. Even if you submit the divorce paper, you can't submit the marriage certificate right away. You have to wait until the divorce is recognized. That's about 2 weeks. But if I let you two write the marriage certificate after becoming a couple, this man might not write it. So, sign now. This is. You've already signed the divorce paper. No matter how much you resist, the result will be the same. With trembling hands, my husband signed the marriage certificate. And Michelle signed it happily. Now you two are married. Congratulations. What a situation. I was managing everything so well until now. From now on, you are mine alone. Ryan, I will be claiming compensation and child support. What? But I don't have any money. Whether you have money or not, it's only natural to claim it. After all, you had a mistress. It costs money to raise Emma. That's not fair, Father. Aren't you wealthy? You have more than enough, even without taking from a poor man like me. That's a different matter. If you don't have money, borrow it and pay in full. In full. How much will it be? Emma is only 2 years old. You'll pay until Emma graduates from university. For the next 20 years, pay $500 each month. You can calculate how much that will be. How am I supposed to borrow that much? I'm unemployed. Who would lend to me? There are plenty of places that will lend to you. Borrowing isn't only about going through reputable sources. That's something for you as a couple to figure out. And Michelle, be prepared because I'll be billing you too. Yes. Since I'm getting married, I'll pay properly. What should I do? Michelle, you pay my share. Ryan, if you have debts, you have to work. Maybe this will finally motivate you to start working. Then you can live a human life. That's right. Michelle, you're something else. Maybe you're better for this man than anyone. Ryan, this might be your last chance for rehabilitation. Work hard and pay it back. But I don't want to work. Well, that's the end of it. You can go home now. No, there's still more. What about the division of assets? The house and car. And other household appliances. I'm entitled to half. You've hardly contributed to the living expenses all this time. The little you did contribute sometimes was money you received from Michelle, wasn't it? You think you could buy a house or car under those circumstances? Everything was bought with money my father helped us with. So the house and the car are my father's. There's nothing for you. That's ridiculous. What about clothes, suits, shoes? Those were also bought by my father, so I'll have them disposed of. Why even those? Just buy them again. It's not a joke, you know. Some of those suits cost thousands of dollars. Give it up. It's your fault for not working. Besides, you've been lying all along. Now you'll have to straighten up for her. Ah, what a situation. Don't worry, I'm here for you. I'll support you so you can work properly. But I won't let you cheat ever again. Michelle said this with a creepy smile. Ryan, oblivious to Michelle's demeanor, was slumped in shock. Later, Ryan moved into the apartment where his mistress lived, but was unable to borrow money as he had hoped. So, Michelle borrowed the money in her name and paid it off in one go. But this was the beginning of hell for him. Michelle, who had always been kind no matter what, revealed an unbelievable true nature. She whipped Ryan into shape for not doing anything around the house, arguing that a man who can't handle household chores couldn't possibly work. While teaching him every household task, she made him look for work. If Ryan didn't move as Michelle wanted, she wouldn't let him eat properly that day. He who does not work, neither shall he eat. That was her principle. Once Ryan finally found a part-time job, Michelle quit her job. Her reason was that she couldn't be sure if he was really working. So she drove him to and from work. Indeed, while saying he was going to work, he might have been messing around with another woman. She never took her eyes off Ryan for a minute, and he was deprived of any freedom. Moreover, she didn't give him any pocket money, and when he went to work, he had to bring a water bottle and a hot dog. The hot dog also had a red heart drawn over the sausage to mark Michelle's presence. Thanks to that, they are managing to make the monthly payments. So it's all thanks to Michelle. However, Ryan has become quite thin and seems to have lost his sanity. Meanwhile, I returned to my parents' house and am living happily with my parents and child. Recently, I've been helping with my father's work, making my social debut and enjoying every day. On the other side of the video call was my sister, dressed in a glamorous outfit, smiling brightly. Hi, Ashley. Congratulations on your wedding. What are you doing right now? I'm in the middle of changing my outfit. She then showed her full outfit on the screen. It was exactly the same dress I had chosen. I was wondering what a wedding without relatives would be like. I'd love to see it. Pretending to be innocent, my sister was actually trying to one-up me. Okay, I replied. My sister looked at the screen and exclaimed in surprise. What? What's going on at your venue? I am Ashley. I'm 30 years old and work in an office. My fiancé, Jason, who is a year older than me, and I have decided to get married. Our common hobby is watching professional baseball. We met at a stadium, and he proposed to me on our way back from a game. The game was tense, with runners on base but no points scored. And they were about to start the lucky seventh inning defense. But the enemy's attack in the seventh inning was unexpected. The enemy? That was my sister. Hannah, for years my junior, certainly has a pretty face, prettier than mine. She has a slightly warped personality. She always wants to imitate me, always has. Whether it's club activities, clothes, or hairstyles, she copied everything about me. Thanks to her pretty face, whatever she does seems to suit her better. Making me feel like a degraded version of her, which is miserable. Moreover, she acts as if she was the one who made these choices before me. Even when I complained to our parents, they would somehow always take her side. We get along as sisters. But there have been times when I've felt bitter about how adorable she is. But I was really shocked when she started imitating me even in marriage. After going through steps like introducing each other to our parents and having face-to-face meetings, we finally started preparing for the wedding. We visited several venues, compared estimates and dates, and thought deeply about it. Just as much as predicting the starting lineup of our favorite baseball team. Thanks to our efforts, we found a place where we could hold the ceremony. On the anniversary of when we started dating. It felt like fate. Let's have our ceremony here. A few days later, I got a call from her. Hi, Ashley. I've decided to get married too. Really? Congratulations. I genuinely congratulated her. She laughed happily. Since you're getting married, I thought I should too. I rushed my boyfriend into proposing. Really? Is it okay for her to get married just because I am? As I was dumbfounded, she said. And guess what? The date of the wedding ended up being the same as yours. What? It's like, the date you guys chose is a really good day, right? We thought we'd take advantage of that too. A really good day. It was, but that's not why we chose it. We decided to hold our ceremony on our anniversary. There are other good days, aren't there? Why would she do something so unreasonable? What about the guests? Huh? Why not just have them come to mine? What? Because, it's more fun for the attendees if the main character is cuter. You couldn't possibly make it exciting like that, could you? Huh? That's why I've already contacted all the relatives to attend my ceremony. Well, I have to go now. See you. With that, she unilaterally ended the call. She's already contacted all the relatives. How quick. It feels like being caught off guard by a tag up after the third foul fly. If I contact the relatives now, all I can say is it's on the same day as my sister's. Those who receive the call will think I'm the unreasonable one and feel sorry for my sister. That would be the worst. Until now, it was just a slightly annoying level. But she has seriously invaded my territory. We have two options: change the date of our ceremony or proceed as planned. It's like either a change-up or a straight in baseball. I cried and apologized to my husband for my sister's unreasonableness. When I consulted with my parents, they said, "We want you to talk it out and resolve it with Hannah." But it seemed like they expected me to give in. I cried again, feeling frustrated and sad. To ruin the eldest daughter's wedding and be happy about it. They are no longer a sister or even a parent to me. My husband listened to me seriously. "But, your sister always copies everything, right? If we change our wedding date, won't she just copy that and overlap it again?" "That's true. Now I'm sure of it. She would do that. If I painfully adjust the schedule and she ruins it again. The memory of our wedding would be summed up in one word: worst. I don't want that. If that's the case, there's no point in changing the date. Let's cherish our anniversary and proceed with the ceremony as planned. But, it will be a ceremony without any family or relatives attending. Let's think about that. Jason and I put our heads together. We decided not to change the wedding date. When I declared this, my parents panicked. They were horrified at the prospect of their two daughters competing for attendees on the same day. Think it over. It will bother the relatives. At least postpone it by half a year. You don't say the same thing to Hannah. It was Hannah who did this on her own. You both think everything will be resolved if I just endure, right? I won't do as you think anymore. It's my once-in-a-lifetime ceremony. That's not what we meant. My parents were flustered as I vented my anger openly. But soon they approached me with stern faces. Apologize. Neither Dad nor I meant any harm. It's disrespectful to your parents. What are they saying? If I were the umpire, such parents would be out. I'm no longer your daughter or anything else. Goodbye. Thus, I broke up with my parents in a fight. I didn't feel sad, but rather, I felt completely relieved. They're free agents now. When my sister heard about my breakup with our parents, she immediately contacted me. "Ashley, what did you say to Dad and Mom? Both of them look really scary, and the atmosphere at home is awful." I told them we're not changing the wedding date. What? On the other end of the phone, my sister gasped. But all the relatives are coming to my side, right? Dad and Mom too. Are you okay with that? It's fine. Do as you like. Since I've cut ties with my parents, the relatives don't matter to me either. Wow, really? Well, let's both have a wonderful wedding. I find my sister's brazenness incredible. She's the type to cry foul when she's not even hit. The reason our sisterly relationship has been smooth up until now is entirely because I've been enduring it. I've been patiently bearing it to maintain our family. That might have encouraged her shamelessness. By the way, Ashley, what did you decide for the invitations? What kind of design? What color? Is the addressing handwritten or printed? I haven't decided yet. Really? Decide quickly. I want to use it as a reference because you have good taste. That means she's declaring she'll copy. Just as Jason predicted, she would follow me if I changed the wedding plans. Realizing how much I had been enduring, I felt tremendous stress from her copying habit. But wait. This could be an opportunity. An opportunity to stop unnecessary endurance. An opportunity to give a taste of their own medicine to my troublesome sister and insensitive parents. I have a few options, but oh, wait, I'll send you the pictures. I deliberately decided to be kind to my sister. Unaware of my intentions, she rejoiced with a purring voice. Wow. I'm so happy. As expected, I can rely on you, Ashley. I thought, rely on me if you want. I can pull off a trick play or two as well. Since then, I've had no contact with my parents. The ties are cut. But I'm still in touch with my sister. Sure enough, she chose the same invitations I did. And she even had the decency to send one to me. As the wedding approached, she continued to probe. So, about your wedding. I responded properly. As the day drew closer, her inquiries became more frequent. The color of the dress. The type of live flowers. The male-to-female ratio of the venue staff. My irritation grew with every question from my sister, who wanted to know everything. Accompanying a message saying, I decided on this dress. Doesn't it look good? Was a photo of my sister wearing the exact same dress I had chosen. If she wants to copy that much, let her. For the first time since she overlapped her wedding day with mine, I called my sister. Hello? So, I made some changes to the wedding menu. What? My sister was surprised. Why? What did you change? I upgraded the meat dish. I also chose a better drink course and asked to add another appetizer. I see. What's it like? Do you have any photos? I want to see. Sure, but what will you do with them? I'll use them as a reference. Her use as a reference means use as a model, which means do the same thing. If you want to see photos, I can send them. But make sure to discuss it well with your husband. Changing the menu can significantly alter the wedding costs. You said before that you couldn't afford any more expenses. I know that. But if you and Jason can do it, so can we. Good luck with that. She insisted I send the photos right away before hanging up. I sighed heavily, and my husband, concerned, said, Why don't you stop contacting your sister? It's stressing you out, right? It is stressful. But I can't stop now. I've decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. If I give up now, I'll end up walking the same path as before. I can't let that happen. It's okay. Don't ask me to stop. This is a battle between sisters by blood. What? I will fight and I will win. This is our WBC, the Women's Bridal Classic, you fool. On the wedding day, Jason and I were nervous. There was the normal tension of heading into the highlight of our lives. And the worry about whether everything was really okay. But once the main event started, that tension blew away. The guests were all warmly watching over us. I was so touched that I cried. The reception started smoothly, and I was at the peak of happiness. I kept my smartphone nearby during the reception to take photos with the guests. Then, my phone rang. I checked the screen, thinking I couldn't answer right now, but the caller was my sister, Hannah. I hesitated for a moment, but then moved to a corner of the venue to answer the call. On the other side of the video call was my sister, dressed in a glamorous outfit, smiling brightly. Hi, Ashley. Congratulations on your wedding. What are you doing right now? I'm in the middle of changing outfits. She then showed her full outfit on the screen. It was exactly the same dress I had chosen. I was wondering what a wedding without relatives would be like. I'd like to see it. Show me. Okay. I switched the camera to show the venue. My sister saw it and exclaimed in surprise. What? What's going on at your venue? It looks like a cocktail party. That's right. It's not a typical reception. We made it a paper attendance wedding party. What? When my sister decided to overlap her wedding date with ours. We judged that a normal reception would be difficult. Honestly, we were at a loss. But after consulting with the venue staff, they were very supportive. They suggested this paper attendance wedding party. It's not a formal reception but a casual party. We handle the opening remarks, the toast, and the closing remarks. The rest of the time is for mingling and recreation. We ask guests to cover the attendance fee, and we don't accept wedding gifts. The meal is buffet style. Normally, receptions serve a full course, which requires a lot of space on the table. This limits the number of people who can sit at one table. But with a buffet, we can increase the number of people around a table. More people at a table means we can invite more guests. The number of people we invite determines our budget. So the more guests, the larger the budget. And unlike wedding gifts, with a fee, it's easier to manage the finances. We decided to upgrade the dishes within our budget. The reason I can afford to be on the phone at the edge of the venue, even though I'm the main character, is that it's a casual party. I didn't know about this. I wasn't told. I didn't say anything. Why? If I told you, you'd just copy it. I don't want you to ruin this important ceremony any further. If I tell you, then I have to ask the bosses and relatives I've invited to not come after all. My sister was gaping, looking a bit pale on the screen. That dress looks good on you. It's the dress I chose. Huh? Oh, yeah. Huh? Aren't you wearing it too? You said you were going to change into it. I've already worn it for the photo shoot, so I won't wear it today. We're changing into our baseball team's uniforms. What? We've invited our baseball-watching friends too. It's going to be a blast. But that's nothing like my wedding. Maybe so. Well, let's both make it a wonderful day. Bye-bye. I waved at my sister with a triumphant smile. It was refreshing. It felt like I had settled a muddy match. I returned to the mingling guests with a light heart. Later, I sent postcards to relatives announcing our marriage. According to relatives who called to congratulate us, our parents strangely avoided mentioning me on the day of the wedding. When asked if there was a fight, they replied, "That child is no longer ours." Oh. So I'm no longer a child of that house. Just what I wanted. I'll gladly discard parents who take my sacrifices and patience for granted. My sister was reportedly emotionally unstable during the latter half of her reception. She had been ecstatic as the center of attention until then. But after changing her outfit, she became fidgety and unsettled, nervously monitoring the staff's movements and the flow of the reception. She even asked if the food could be changed now or if anything could be cancelled. Utterly unreasonable. The venue staff must have been troubled. As long as my sister is imitating me, if anything goes wrong, she can say, "I did the same as my sister," and escape responsibility. But this time, at the grand stage of the reception, that escape was not available because our receptions were completely different. The responsibility for upgrading the menu or changing the dress code, disregarding the budget, was all on my sister. She must have started searching for a realistic line in a panic, but it was too late. Trying to fix things in the middle of the reception, after half of it was over, was absurd. A relative who spoke to me said the food was wonderful. It was a special menu, tailored to match the dishes at my wedding party. With the upgraded menu, the cost of the meal alone must have been enormous. The cost of changing outfits, including dressing and makeup fees, must have added up too. It was like signing free agents without considering the budget of the team formation. And the result? Needless expenses piled up. Relations with her husband's family deteriorated, which affected their marriage. Like a relief pitcher who gets burned and gives up many runs. A marriage that starts under such conditions isn't likely to go well. They separated immediately after returning from their honeymoon. But my sister can't even return to her supposed safe haven, her parents' home. With me gone, the relationship between her and our parents quickly destabilized. She told me everything even though I didn't ask, probably in order to blame me. Divorce seems only a matter of time. Not sorry at all. If she finds someone else, I hope she thinks and acts on her own next time. After the wedding chaos settled, my husband and I visited his parents' home to greet them. We thanked his parents for their understanding about not having a traditional wedding ceremony and reception, but a wedding party instead. They surprised us with a luxurious cake they had prepared. The room was decorated beautifully with flowers. They warmly welcomed us, saying, "Well done at the party," despite the fact that they couldn't see their son's big moment. Because of my circumstances, they were so kind. I was so grateful and moved to tears. My husband and I cut the wedding cake in front of the camera his parents had prepared. Our wedding cake cutting. It was a game where we had given up many runs to the opponent's lucky 7. But we hit a grand slam home run in return. A fresh start with the old family swept away. From now on, we will surely be happy. It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. It seems that my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. As proof, he didn't even try to ask about our current situation. Ah, right. I should introduce you to my current wife. This is Julia. He introduced his new spouse to me. What was he thinking? Ah, is that all? Are we done here? Bye then. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my way again. Hey. Are you jealous because we look happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. I was so angry that I felt sick. As I remained silent, he was about to say something more, but Steve interrupted him. Mom, why don't you fire this old man? What? My name is Kim. I am now 42 years old. I married Michael, a colleague from the same company, when I was 26. I continued to work after our marriage, but I quit my job when I got pregnant. Afterward, our son Steve was born. Once he turned 7 and started elementary school, child-rearing became a bit easier. Thinking it might be good to start working outside again, I discussed it with my husband. It seemed he had been waiting for this, as he agreed immediately. He probably thought it would help with our finances. But he began rushing me while I was job hunting. Did you find a job yet? No. Are you even looking properly? Any job will do, right? He seemed really eager for me to work. Moreover, while I was looking for a part-time job, he suggested, if you're going to work, isn't it better to work full-time? Even if not every day, how about 3 days a week for 8 hours each? Working too long would take me out of your dependent coverage, you know? Just because Steve is in elementary school doesn't mean he doesn't need any attention. I get home early, after all. However, Michael suggested that since I could put Steve in after-school care, Working full-time 5 days a week would be better if being a dependent is a loss. He really seemed to want me to work long hours. I had said I wanted to work, so I couldn't argue much. But I was anxious since I hadn't worked for many years. Even if I decided to work full-time, I wanted to gradually get used to it. Quitting because it's too hard after starting wouldn't feel right. For now, I decided to start with a part-time job of about 20 hours a week, assuming I would work full-time eventually. Michael was complaining that I should start full-time right away. But when I said I would consider it if my health allowed, he reluctantly agreed. I never thought he was so concerned about our finances. Honestly, I found my husband's interference in job hunting annoying, yet I was also pleased. It's better to live long-term with someone who thinks about finances to some extent, rather than someone who is indifferent. However, I would later realize that this perception was wrong. One day, a few months after I started the part-time job, I received a message on my smartphone. Wondering who it could be, I checked and saw a name I hadn't seen in a long time. It was my former colleague and currently a colleague of my husband. It had been a while, so I casually read the message. But what it said shocked me so much that I exclaimed aloud. What? What does this mean? You must be joking. Long time no see. I saw your husband the other day. And he seemed really close to some woman. I thought it might be an affair, so I sent you this message. The message was informing me of my husband's affair, and it even included a photo. My heart was shaken. The photo clearly showed my husband. And he was arm in arm with a woman I didn't know. Of course, even if I knew her, being arm in arm would still be unacceptable. As I was shocked by the photo, another message came in. This woman is actually the daughter of the department head. She's also an employee of our company, so she definitely knows your husband is married. They're really bold, aren't they? I wonder if this is just how kids are these days. From my colleague's message, it was clear she was enjoying this gossip. But I replied with a thank you and closed the messaging app. I had never imagined my husband was having an affair. However, thinking back, there were many signs. Especially since he had been pushing me to work more at a time, when childrearing was not yet stable. Today, my husband was supposed to be on an overnight business trip. Probably, it was a lie to meet his affair partner leisurely. The next day, when my husband returned, I immediately confronted him. Although I knew it was better to collect evidence calmly if we were going to divorce, I couldn't pretend to be fine. What is this about? When I showed him the photo, my husband was surprised at first. But then he quickly regained his composure and became defiant. Ah, I see. You knew. Well, it can't be helped. As you can see. Honestly, I was surprised because I expected him to make some excuse. The woman is the daughter of the department head. The department head is guaranteed a higher position in the future. I guess you understand from this? To put it bluntly, marrying this woman benefits me. She's younger and prettier than you. My husband looked at me as if I was stupid. I thought about apologizing and crying, considering our son Steve. So I had thought not to divorce him. However, how could I with his attitude like this? He showed no remorse for his affair. Instead, he blatantly compared me with his affair partner and said she was better. As I remained silent, my husband became even more emboldened. Well, that's the situation. I think I'll divorce you. It's a bit earlier than planned. But I was going to tell you eventually, so this is just the right time. And so, we got divorced. After being told so much, I couldn't say I didn't want to divorce him. It was better for my mental health to get a divorce quickly, get compensation, and end things. My husband paid the compensation at my asking price and transferred almost all his property to me. Naturally, I gained custody of Steve. For my husband, who was planning to marry the department head's daughter, giving away some money was probably nothing to him. In fact, when he was leaving the house, he left me with these last words. "Well, do your best living in poverty. Raising a child by yourself, you'll never be wealthy. Unlike you, I'm joining the celebrities." The department head's family is rich, after all. We'll probably never meet again, but struggle at the bottom. It's unbelievable that he could say such things, even though he has his own blood-related child. I felt relieved deep down to be divorcing such a man. Mentally I felt better, but everyday life was still tough. Even though I received compensation and property, I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard from now on. Living on just a part-time job was not possible. Eventually, I quit my part-time job and started working full-time. I felt sorry for Steve, but after elementary school, he had to go to after-school care by himself. Unintentionally, I ended up working full-time, and both my body and mind suddenly became very strained. The new job was unfamiliar, and I had to do all the housework by myself when I got home. Life changed completely from before, and the days passed by in a blur as I was too busy. Before I realized it, 7 years had passed since my divorce. But no matter how busy you are, humans adapt. Steve has become a middle schooler and can mostly take care of himself now. Because I've been busy, he has grown up to be quite a solid young man compared to other boys his age. He even cooks and does the laundry. Thanks to him, I've been freed from both housework and parenting. And for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and professional lives are going very well. Now I can say it clearly, it was definitely good that I divorced such a man. If I had continued to be married to that awful man, I would never have achieved this life. However, one day while shopping at the local mall with my son, I ran into that awful person, my ex-husband, Michael. I hadn't noticed him, but he approached me. "Hey, isn't that you, Kim? Long time no see. You've aged quite a bit." Is that something you say when you meet someone after a long time? No person with normal sensibilities would ever tell a woman she has aged. That comment alone showed me that my ex-husband hasn't grown at all as a person. I became irritated within seconds and responded tersely. "What? You look pretty old yourself. I barely recognized you." Honestly, my ex-husband really had aged quite a bit. I hadn't seen him in 7 years, but it seemed like he had aged twice that much. His hair was thinning, and he had a pot belly, a complete middle-aged look. Talking to my ex-husband felt like a waste of time, so I said, well, long time no see. But you don't really need anything from me, right? So, see you around, and tried to walk away. But it wasn't going to be that easy. My ex-husband blocked my path and started spouting nonsense. "Hey, don't be so cold. We're finally all together. Let's catch up a bit." I really didn't want to hear anything about my ex-husband's current situation. The only thing I would want to say is about the child support payments. He stopped making a few years after the divorce. Child support isn't my right, it's Steve's right. Yet, there he was, daring to talk in front of Steve. But my ex-husband didn't care about my mood at all. He started rambling about his own life, which I had no interest in hearing. I remarried after that. to the daughter of the department head in that photo. Oh, he's not just a department head now, but a managing director. And thanks to that, I've been promoted to department head myself. I'm definitely on the winning side now. Honestly, no matter how much my ex-husband has climbed the corporate ladder, it doesn't affect me, and I'm not envious. All I thought was, so what? I was even more annoyed that he climbed the ladder yet didn't pay child support. It's truly stingy of a winner not to pay a few hundreds of dollars per month. My ex-husband continued to boast, ruffling my feelings even more. It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. Ultimately, my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. That's proof enough since he didn't even try to ask about our lives. Normally, a parent would be interested in their son's life, but here he was. Not even speaking to Steve, who was right in front of him. Truly an awful father. Ah, right. I should introduce you to my current wife. Hey. My ex-husband called out to a woman looking at clothes nearby. The woman came over to us, and I immediately knew who she was. I had seen her in a photo once. Yes. She was my ex-husband's new wife. This is Julia, my current wife. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you were, right? He introduced his new wife to me. What was he thinking? This woman was the one who stole my husband while we were married. I'm glad we're divorced now, but it was a shock back then, and I harbored resentment. There's no way I could have a good impression of this woman. Even a dimwit like my ex-husband should understand that much. But he must really look down on us. It seems he can't even comprehend such basic things. Ah, is that so? Are we done here? I'm not free, you know. Bye then. I said my goodbyes with an extremely displeased feeling. Of course, I didn't even glance at the woman, much less greet her. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my path again. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your family. Hey. Are you jealous because we seem happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. It's none of your business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The biggest misfortune recently was you talking to me. Even though I said I was happy. My ex-husband didn't believe me and pitted my situation anyway. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but poverty isn't happy, right? Don't strain yourself. If a single, divorced mother with a child were happy, there would be no unhappy people. With that background, remarriage is impossible for you. I'm just worried as your ex-husband, you know? While saying this, the expression on my ex-husband's face was the exact opposite of concerned. He was completely mocking me. When I looked at his wife next to him, she had a smug, mocking smile as well. I could never be friends with this woman. She's the worst kind, getting pleasure from looking down on others. Right? I told you. You're much better than her. Be confident. My ex-husband was flattering his current wife, comparing her to me and praising her to the skies. Well, she did help him climb the career ladder. So he's probably buttering her up whenever he can. Truly the worst kind of man. You're really the lowest of the low. I can't believe you were married to her. His wife mocked me despite meeting me for the first time. That's the worst kind of behavior in a person. I wanted to leave because I felt like I might respond if I stayed any longer. But my ex-husband stood in my way, so I couldn't move. Just so you know, we're still in love. So there's zero chance of getting back together with you. Don't get any weird hopes. My ex-husband was under some ridiculous delusion. To think he believed I had lingering feelings after he caused our divorce with his cheating. And 7 years later, he still thought so. His head was too full of fantasies, and I was speechless. As I was speechless at my ex-husband's ridiculous fantasy, he seemed to think he was right. Hey. Shocked into silence? It's tough being a man in demand. With his thoroughly middle-aged appearance, what part of him was in demand? I was beyond angry, I felt sick. As I stayed silent, my ex-husband was about to say something more. But then, Steve spoke up. Mom, why don't we fire this old man? What? My ex-husband was so baffled by what Steve said. Steve seemed quite angry, calling his own father this old man. Well, that's perfectly fine by me. What do you mean, fire me? Do you understand what being fired means? I'm not someone your mom can just fire, you know? You're in middle school, right? You should study properly. My ex-husband even spoke condescendingly to Steve. It's one thing to mock me, but it's unforgivable to insult my beloved son. Just as my anger toward my ex-husband was about to explode, I heard someone calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man approached as he called out, and my ex-husband's face froze. Why are you here? Mr. President. My ex-husband questioned the man in front of him. Why shouldn't I be here? I'm just shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. I was just wondering why you, the president, were talking to my ex-wife. Ah, that makes sense. She's my wife now, after all. What? She's the president's wife. I can't believe it. Actually, I had remarried the president of the company, where my ex-husband works about 3 years after I was widowed. I became close to the president shortly after my divorce when he approached me while I was shopping at a supermarket. I had worked at the same company as my ex-husband, so I knew the president. My ex-husband had an affair with the department head's daughter, which led to our divorce, and then he married her. The president was well aware of this and, as a man, he seemed quite displeased by it. However, he felt he couldn't interfere with an employee's private affairs. That's when he spotted me at the supermarket and couldn't resist saying hello. I was surprised that the president remembered me, a mere former employee, by face and name, as I had been a receptionist at the company, which might have made it easier for him to remember. It seems your marriage didn't go well, but I'm sure you'll find someone much better soon. Mr. President, I'm glad you remember me. But you don't have to worry about me, I'm doing fine. At the time, I had been divorced for less than a year and was still putting on a brave face. However, the president, with his extensive life experience, saw right through my facade and offered kind words. They say divorce takes 3 times the effort of marriage. No matter how smoothly the divorce goes, it's exhausting. I haven't divorced, but when my wife passed away, I barely felt like doing anything. It's tough when a couple who once loved each other parts ways. So, there's no need to pretend you're not hurting. The president knew the loneliness that comes with the end of a marriage. Indeed, while I felt it was better to have split, I was also feeling a mix of loneliness and emptiness at the time. So his words really resonated with me. Talking about it might ease your mind. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'll always treat you to a meal. He said this and gave me his business card. I felt it was too forward to contact him for about 2 years, but as time passed, I found myself wanting to talk to someone again. Finally, I decided to reach out to the president. Despite his busy schedule, the president made time for me and treated me to a meal. When I was an employee, he was still a department head and seemed unapproachable. But having a meal with him revealed he was a genuinely nice man. Perhaps it was easier because I was no longer with the company. But soon the president and I became good drinking buddies. About a year later, he proposed to me with a serious look on his face. "You're joking, right, Chris? Don't say things like that even as a joke." I thought it was a joke since he mentioned it while we were drinking. But the president was serious. "At first, I just wanted to cheer you up after your divorce. But being with you really settles me. I haven't felt this way about anyone since my wife passed away. Honestly, you've been healing me. If you're willing, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. Please give me a day to think about it," I said and consulted my son. "I don't mind. It's up to you, Mom. Decide based on whether you like him or not." Since there was no opposition, I decided to marry the president. To be honest, I liked him. I thought of him as a drinking buddy, but I also felt healed when I was with him. We healed each other, so there was no reason not to live together. And listening to him talk about his late wife, it was clear how much he had loved her. Every time I heard his stories, I felt fortunate to be marrying someone who could love me as he did. I even felt a bit jealous of his wife. Thus, we became husband and wife. The president treats my son as if he were his own. He had no children with his previous wife, but they get along so well that they seem like a real father and son. I am truly as happy now as I told my ex-husband I was. My ex-husband turned pale and trembled when he heard I had married the president. He probably never imagined that his ex-wife, whom he looked down upon as poor, would be married to the president. "Dad, this man was mocking Mom. Fire him," Steve ruthlessly told on my ex-husband to the president. "You fool." "No, Steve. What are you talking about? We were just catching up." My ex-husband tried to cover it up, but it was obvious to the president. You tend to look down on others, even at the company. I think what Steve is saying is true. I've heard various bad things about you from your subordinates. I think it's time for an internal investigation, so be prepared. My ex-husband never expected that Steve's words would be taken seriously by the president, leading to an investigation into his misconduct at the company. He apologized. "I'm sorry. I may have been a bit harsh to your wife. I apologize. Can you please hold off on the internal investigation?" Despite the crowded shopping mall, he apologized, clearly desperate to avoid the investigation. However, this act was practically an admission of his wrongdoing. The president was not swayed. "No, I'll proceed with it regardless. By the way, the executive director you are close to has also been receiving bad reviews. I'll thoroughly investigate both of you." Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's wife also apologized. "Please, not him. Just this man is fine, but leave my father out of this." Hearing her words, my ex-husband immediately began to argue with her. "What are you saying? Are you abandoning me? Don't mess with me. There are plenty of men like you. Of course, my father is more important." Their marital spat was indeed disgraceful, and we didn't want to be associated with such behavior. So we ignored the arguing couple and left the store. That selfish couple probably wouldn't last long after this. They had it coming. The president quickly organized a team the next day to thoroughly investigate the conduct of my ex-husband and the executive director. The findings were damning: harassment and verbal abuse toward subordinates, favoritism in personnel decisions, and demands for entertainments from business partners using their positions of power. These abuses had been ongoing for years. Using one's position to solicit personal gains was unacceptable, especially in today's age. As a result, both my ex-husband and the executive director were stripped of their positions and reassigned to regional branches. Probably, my ex-husband knew this would happen, which is why he had apologized in the shopping mall. He was aware of his misconduct. Knowing yet continuing such behavior made it even more reprehensible. His career was likely over. According to the president, both eventually resigned from the company, likely fearing retaliation from the employees they had harassed. They chose to leave. However, their troubles didn't end with their resignations. They were sued by the employees they had mistreated. Disliked by most, their numerous abusive acts were well documented, and they lost the lawsuit, facing substantial damages. The financial ruin drove my ex-husband's wife to blame him, worsening their marital relationship, which soon ended in divorce. The frequent fights and his abusive behavior might even lead to another lawsuit from his wife for damages. Watching my ex-husband's downfall reinforced my belief in living a straightforward and honest life. Meanwhile, I was blessed with a child with the president. At 42, it was a high-risk pregnancy, but our baby was born healthy, bringing immense joy. Steve was thrilled to be a big brother, lovingly taking part in caring for the baby every day. We even talk about Steve joining the company in the future. Despite the challenges of parenting at our age, seeing our baby's sleeping face makes all worries vanish. I'm grateful for this new life and ready to face tomorrow with resolve.